passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in, touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
Swinging it right to deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Foster.
Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. The show is a part of the Pulse Podcast Network. I'm Jarid Watson, along with Andy Billman, and this is our 2019 Indians preview show. Coming up, we're going to talk about the Indians and what's to be expected this year, as well as we're going to have a conversation with Mandy Bell. She's the Indians beat reporter for MLB.com. But first, a message from Tix Blitz. They are the official ticket provider of the Pulse Podcast Network.
Have you been searching for the best ticket deals around? Well, look no further. With TixFlix, the price you see is the price you pay. And TixFlix just happens to have over $6 billion in ticket inventory just waiting for you. They absolutely mean it when they say every ticket, every venue, everywhere. And you can save even more with promo code PULSE in all caps to save you 5% off your total purchase. Just go to TixFlix.com and click the search bar. Search events based on your geographic location. Pick the show you want, and bam, it's showtime. Sporting events, Broadway shows, concerts, and more with TixFlix.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for the email newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest news and savings with TixFlix. That's TixFlix.com, TixBlitz.com. Every ticket, every venue, everywhere.
Just use the promo code PULSE for 5% off. That's PULSE, P-U-L-S-E, and the promo code for 5% off. And they've got a wide variety of tickets from sporting events to music concerts. Check it out. Get the best tickets. Use TixBlitz.com, TixBlitz.com.
Cleveland Indians.
Coming off a 3-game sweep to the Houston Astros in the ALDS. I didn't want to relive this, Andy, but... Thank you. We both felt like change was coming with the Indians, and we knew that it's not exactly all the change that we were hoping for, but we're here with this, and we're going to work through it. And there is the potential that this team, I think, can surprise a lot of people. They are still chosen, at least by a lot of baseball experts, to still win the AL Central and to have their 90+ wins, but we know that on the fan side of things, there's a lot of grumpiness in regard to this current Indians team, especially on the offensive side of the ball and in certain positions, the outfield and so on. Andy, what are we dealing with here with this new Indians look?
I think part of it is in life, and then we'll get to all the changes briefly, and then we'll get to this year.
Right.
Part of it too is the Indians. We love this team because of how hard they played, even though they lost to the Cubs. I love the 16 team.
Yes.
It's going to be a very warm memory, even though they lost to the Cubs. Rajai Davis, someone made you feel like you won the game along with LeBron's celebration. And the Cubs won, there's no question, but that team has a soft spot. Because of that, Jarid, I think this offseason's been hard.
Yeah.
Because it's finally changed. And you and I both said it at the time, and it's happened. You can't keep going along like this. 16 finally died in Game 3 in Cleveland with that bad couple innings, and the game blew up. That was the end of it. And so what you had, Andrew Miller gone, Cody Allen gone, Lonnie Chisenhall, Brandon Guyer, Josh Tomlin, all those guys are gone. It traded away with Yan Gomes, Edwin Encarnacion, Yandy Diaz.
Yeah.
So all those guys, that's a big haul of changes. And, teams go through change and whatnot. And I'm not saying the Indians are the only team that did this, but Jarid, there's some other players I left off. That's a huge amount of change.
Well, one of those players, being Michael Brantley, who had suffered from injuries, but you didn't really expect him to be around either. And it's a huge change. It's a huge change. I think that the one that obviously bothers both of us more than any of them has got to be the Yan Gomes move.
I think because your team's strength is pitching and the catcher is so important, as you and I both believe in, to lose Yan Gomes. Now, we don't have an unproven catcher. We know who Berto Perez is. He gets big hits and big spots in the playoffs. So I'm not saying you're going here someone who we've never seen catch. I'm sorry. We've seen him catch. The only thing is he's now the everyday catcher. We will get to that, I think, in this podcast. I think that's important. Some new faces, Jake Bowers, Matt Joyce, Jordan Leplow. Tyler Clippard, who just got signed, Alex Wilson, who just got signed over from the Tigers, Hanley Ramirez, which we'll get into later, and then he got an old face returning in Carlos Santana. And then, the other thing the Indians are dealing with, which is interesting, is they have a lot of players who are injured who are coming back. Zimmer's going to come back in July. Leonis Martin, who was almost, you hate to say something like this, but Jared, he wasn't doing well in the hospital with that infection. So he was having problems. Cody Anderson, for people who forget, I was a big Cody Anderson fan. Then he got hurt. Tommy John really, anytime you have Tommy John, it's obviously you lose a season. But Cody's really lost a season and a half. He's finally coming back. He was pitching so well before TJ surgery. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. So you get all this stuff. And then how do you really start off the offseason? Frankie Lindor, a week or two before camp, right calf strain. And really, I think that goes to this point. So you got change. And then you got the face and your name of the organization, which is Frankie, and he's hurt. Jared, it's not unfair to say to fans, it's a little gray cloud coming in.
Fans aren't happy. Fans, and again, we're not going to get into the Hanley Ramirez stuff right at the moment, but even fans were throwing a fit over a move that has the potential down the road to make a difference, possibly, maybe. But if it doesn't, nobody's hurt, worse for the wear. But at the same time, I think that what I've noticed is fans look at every move that this team is making at the moment and finding something negative to grab onto.
Yes.
And I think that they have the right to do that. Now, where the back and forth bickering goes into this as well is, well, you know what? You weren't buying the tickets to go sit in the seats. And I've heard that argument, too, on the other side. And Andy, I don't know. I don't know if I lived in Cleveland, whether that would be true for me or not. I have a feeling I'd be there just because of who I am and how much I love baseball. But I don't want to turn this into a battle between the organization and the fans. But fans are disappointed in what they're seeing. And I think that what we might be able to do in this episode is give a tinge of a silver lining. But I know that the argument's still going to go back to, you win the Central, great, but what do you do against the Astros, the Red Sox, and the Yankees? What do you do against those teams come that time? Because you might have the best starting lineup pitching-wise in the league, but even those guys haven't necessarily shown up in the past couple postseasons. So
Agreed. And again, when you don't have your leader who's not playing, Frankie's not playing. I know he's in spring training. But when your leader's not playing, Jared, that affects your team and affects the fan base.
Yeah.
And then you get this little lull, and then Trevor Bauer news comes in. First with the arbitration, and doing the SI article. I think that's where we're going to start with this podcast here. So Bauer comes out, arbitration, for people who don't follow a lot in baseball, and for people who don't follow the ongoings of winter, arbitration's not unusual anymore. It happens quite a bit. And in fact, it is so unusual, it's usually no news at all. Usually you just get the money figure, either the team or the player wins, and that's it. In Trevor Bauer's case, when the arbitration came up, he made it into, I would say for the first time I've ever seen, Jared, and I've heard many other people say it, he made it into really I would say an event, where he was I'll just quote him. They spent the last 10 minutes of his arbitration case trying to do a character assassination.
Right.
I learned that giving to a charity was a bad thing. I learned that agreeing with someone on a podcast just for the sake of an argument, that it was worth 10.5 and not 13 million. So that's all from Trevor. That's all from Trevor.
So let me break that down a little bit on my opinion for how this went down. And a lot of people who listen to this podcast know I'm not a big fan of Trevor Bauer. We're going to talk more about him in a little bit. I'm going to say that I've changed my opinion about Trevor, and we'll get into that in a little while.
Well,
but Trevor, when he makes those comments, there's a little bit of being disingenuous, right?
Yes.
Because we know that it has nothing to do with the giving to charities. We have everything. I mean, when you change it to be 420 and 69 in everything that you do, that's no longer about the charity. That's about look at me, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that Trevor Bauer doesn't drink and has never smoked anything. I get that too, right? So, which, by the way, whether he did or didn't, I'm not holding against him anyways. There's no judgment there either. But my point is, it's not black and white for either side. Should the Indians have gone after him in that sense during arbitration? No. There's a precedent. That you talk baseball. You talk whether he's good enough on the field or whether he's not, and that's how that should have went down, and everyone knows it in that sense. So Trevor's arguments, while they don't necessarily defend him in a way that I would say matter just as much as the Indians and what they said about him doesn't matter. What matters is what he did on the field and how he's playing, and going to arbitration made sense for him. He got his money, and that's how that went. And that's how Trevor's going to be, as far as we know, for the rest of his career, not only with the Indians, but with everybody.
I would just say, working at ESPN for a while and being a Walt Disney employee for 16 years, Trevor needs to learn. I agree with everything you said there at the back end. I would not have done that either. But Trevor has to realize you're in a society when you make 69 and 420 comments into a number. I agree. I wouldn't care. But you know what? People who are sitting on boardrooms and executives, they do care. And this is a business. And I do understand.
Even if those ones in the executives in the boardroom are doing the awful things.
I know. Well, yeah, that's a whole nother lane. I will say the Indians don't seem to have any of that, but there's other organizations that do.
Yes.
The Indians seem to be very clean, actually. But when it comes
and well managed.
Right. But when it comes to that stuff, that's the thing that I don't agree with Trevor. It's like, you got to understand where the Indians are coming from, though, too. You're looking at this into too much of a box, as we like to say. Like, the whole spectrum is, this kind of reflects back on the Indians. Like, when you did things at ESPN and they didn't agree with it, they would always say, but it reflects back on Disney and reflects back on ESPN. Whether you agree with it or not, whether the seriousness or not, this reflects back on the Indians. And by the way, this has reflected on the Indians. The Indians have just got a charge from that whole thing. What I would say at the end of the day with Trevor, or this whole, is I'm basically in Trevor's corner, except for what I just mentioned. Here's the other thing. I would really pump the brakes on saying much more about the Indians throughout the year. I would leave Antonetti and Chernoff out of your mouth.
I think he's kind of learning that.
Yeah,
but that's the problem that he's run into, is that he speaks out of both sides of his mouth.
I know.
He comes off as this very logical and thoughtful person in regard to his work ethic and what he does, and being just honest about everything. And but then he'll have to backtrack because he knows he's got to eat his words in certain situations.
I agree. I'm a bit, as you all know, I'm a huge Indians fan, and I do like Trevor Bauer. That'd be my friendly advice to him. Like, you made your point. I'm telling you, as someone who studies sports and studies a lot of sports organizations, the Indians are one of the best when it comes to this kind of stuff. Leave them alone. Right. I'm telling you.
Well, I'll say this too. On the other side of things, what we've learned from this SI article that we'll get into is this.
We can get into
I would leave Trevor Bauer alone in regard to what he's doing with his process. I would say maybe open your eyes a little bit and see if this is something that you could use for other guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's go.
Or if not, just let him do his thing. The guy has made a difference. You can look at the runs he's knocked off his ERA. He's made a difference. He's made a difference for his own play, being an advocate and for himself and following his own model throughout his entire career. End of story. End of story.
Here's what I would say about the SI articles. We can jump to that. Okay. The arbitration happened, then 5 days later, the SI article comes out. Here's the thing about the SI article that got way too much attention. And by the way, it's not surprising. The whole dating thing. And, look, I don't agree with any of his dating tactics, being a single male. But look,
I wonder how much of that's tongue in cheek. Or whether
I don't know.
My thing is, how many people are dating him, considering how many?
Jared, he doubled down in an interview. Trevor's got his dating rules. People can agree, disagree. Right. We'll get. I'm just telling you, it's someone who saw him. There's I think it's WKYC interviewed him shortly after that article came out.
Okay,
he doubled down, and he doubled down hard. But that's okay. That's who he is, all right? I don't think that's anyways, that's for another podcast.
Well, and again, we can say, while it's crude and while it's not something that you or I would necessarily do, or not even necessarily, something that we don't subscribe to beliefs-wise that is a right way of living, we can say he's not abusive to women. He's not, as far as we know, he's not paying to be with women. He's not,
He's certainly
supporting a culture of other awful things that happen to women. And that again, what are we actually mad at?
Here's the thing.
And it's just image stuff.
I'll say it. It's unrealistic, his dating rules. It's pretty stupid. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
Trevor
work that
a lot.
way, right? Someone's catching feelings, end of story, and you're going to hurt people.
Trevor, I would talk to Trevor about this. Look, Trevor, I like you. You seem like a good dude at the end of the day, but your dating rules make no sense. Don't even explain them. It's just one of those moments where it's like, you were so extreme on it. Well done. That's what he was trying to do there, I think. But again, he doubled down. Anyways, all right. I didn't want to go down that tunnel too much, but we did. But here's the thing.
Well, he's an enigma because it's hard to figure out where he's coming from on certain things. You think you got a beat on him because of stuff that you learn in the SI article, but then you're wondering what some of it's for his own amusement, maybe. I don't know.
Well, he's a very different thinker, and certainly in baseball, it's funny. Jockism always goes to what sport? Football. It always goes to that sport. Baseball's got a lot of
I did 13 years of it. Yep.
Yeah, baseball's got a lot of it too, and so I think that's the thing I learned about. Now to the other stuff in the article, which is what I found fascinating.
Yeah.
I do like this. This is why I'm a Trevor Bauer fan. I like the fact that he found a way that works for him. It's not going to work for everything. He does even something where it's basically he's zapping his brain to get.
And I know about this process, by the way, Andy.
Yeah, it's called I'm not going to pronounce that word
right.
It's
transcranial direct current stimulation. And so, Andy, the reason I know about this is because I have a buddy who produced a documentary in regard to the Air Force's development of this program that they call brain stimulation, brain stim. And you're not zapping, you're not electrocuting your head. It's not electroshock therapy. What it is this low voltage, right? It's this low voltage in certain areas. You wear a cap on your head and it buzzes a little bit. And what it is it's got this effect of and I might not be doing some of the explanation justice, but it's got this effect of kind of giving you a cup of coffee, gives you a little more alertness.
I hear you.
Right.
I did some research on it. He is getting zapped. Whenever you put volts into your brain, I'm just going to say it. He's getting zapped,
your brain,
right?
That's how your brain works. It works on electricity anyways.
Look.
Just the level.
I'm not a science. I don't know. It's a little weird, but whatever. But again, it works for him. He has found a system that works for him.
Military.
He is by far, and by the way, here's where Trevor Bauer is such a positive for this team. This sport, by far, for a long time, but it did a deep dive into analytics really right around the time Moneyball came out.
Right.
And Trevor Bauer follows that script all the way to a T. I mean, he does certain methods. He believes in certain things. He has a routine. He believes in doing things to help his curveball or do this or do that.
He watches, he will have super fast cameras.
Yes.
Record so that he can track spin rate and all the way to the 100th of a second, whatever, to see when he's lifted his fingers off the ball, to see, to make the change of the spin. I mean, it's nerd stuff, but he makes it cool, doesn't he?
No, he does make it cool. And the thing I like about Trevor is he keeps his head down and he believes in it. And that's something we should all take. Whether it's analytics, whether it's weightlifting, whether it's going on speed and you're doing what Jerry Rice used to do, running in sand, whatever your method is to become the best, if you believe in it, keep your head down. People thought Jerry Rice was crazy. And everybody started doing what Jerry Rice did. I'm sure there's some people here that thought that Trevor Bauer was crazy. Don't be surprised they started getting a big jump of people doing this.
Well,
because
the irony is it's worked for him.
That's right.
But he's getting trashed for it.
Well, he shouldn't be getting trashed for it.
He was on the ballot for the Cy Young last year. So I mean, what are you doing trashing him about it for?
But by the way, I do agree with one thing that he kind of alluded to. If Bauer doesn't get hurt, I think Bauer wins. I think I forget the guy's name for the Rays, and he deserved to win the Cy Young. I don't want to say he was a throwaway win because that's not true. But it wouldn't have been a horse race between him and Bauer to win it. I think Bauer would have won it at the end. Bauer was playing that well until that line drive in Chicago. I mean, he was playing. He was really playing.
I felt
that
like
well.
I was waiting for him to come back into the lineup forever.
The other thing this explained too in this article, which I've always gotten the vibe, there is definitely, and I'm not saying it's unhealthy, but we can say it now. There's definitely a divide in the Indians locker room. There is the side of whether it's Kipnis. I would say that's part of it. Probably Lindor, Ramirez, those kind of guys hang out in one corner. And then there's I would say the Trevor Bauer guys, which is Bieber and Clevenger. Sounds like Neil Ramirez and Goody. And, I think I'm not going to get into that being terrible. And here's why. Especially in baseball, there's been plenty of examples of teams like this, starting with the 7 with the Bronx Bombers in the 70s, where not everybody got along, especially even the manager and Reggie. So to say these kind of things don't work, I don't agree with at all. These things can work and make a team better.
Pitchers have always been in their own little weird clique anyway. Who cares?
That's right.
Who cares?
And by the way, it really works for Clevenger and Bauer because they're playing well.
Yeah.
So, don't mess with it. But we can now, you and I kind of talked about it in September. We definitely talked about it in October after the season's ending. Jared, I think now it's pretty much pronounced. There is, again, I would say the Lindor, Ramirez, Kipnis side of the locker room, and then there is the Bauer, Shane Bieber, Clevenger, Goody. It sounds like there's that kind of side of the locker room.
Yeah.
And you can tell. And again, I'm not saying they don't get along. I'm just saying that those are two personalities you're seeing projected here.
I think the more that they understood each other, this is typical psychology stuff. Here I go. This is what you get when you got a co-host who's a grad student in psych. If they understand, you don't have to be best friends. You just have to be able to empathize with somebody. Put yourself in their shoes. See where they're coming from. Just give it a minute.
Yep. And
then at least you don't want to kill each other over dumb stuff. That's really all we're asking for here. We're not asking you to go down and go hang out on 4th Street after the game and run over to Mabel's and eat eat ribs together. Like that's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is just figure it out amongst each other and try to be the best version of you can when you're out there on the field. I think that if some of the things that I'm wondering, though, we know that it's difficult, though, because we're talking about, especially, and I've talked about this in the past with Clevenger being buddies with Bauer and the way that that's worked out. There's quotes in this article in regard to even Tito wasn't left out in regard to Bauer increasing his speed on the pitch on his fastball and even Tito saying
Callaway too.
He got into it. Callaway went at him and Bauer said, if you're coming at me, at least you better bring some real hard data to say that your way is better than my way. So that stuff needs to stop. Like that stuff needs to stop. I get it. And that Tito's making the comment about Bauer not maybe getting a gun that was off for increased speed on his fastball. It kind of called him out a little bit in the press conference. Clevenger and them, but they didn't take it. They didn't like that. Like those things need to stop.
Well, let's go down that road. The one thing that is there's a lot more positive here than negative, but here's a couple negatives.
Right.
Especially the Cody Allen comments. I did not take those the right way. He's probably right. I'm not saying
the comments
Trevor's
were
wrong.
about Cody Allen were that Cody Allen's curveball were screwing him basically,
right? And
he couldn't get it under control. And Bauer was like, I could have helped him fix that.
Yeah, and okay, there's two parts here. One, that's not necessarily true. That's something I do want to say too. Like people, again, Bauer needs to realize this. Just because it works for you and is working for Bieber and Clevenger and you're helping each other out, does not mean it's going to help Adam Plutko or Cody Allen or whoever. So he needs to keep that in mind. And two, when you're dealing with someone who's a closer and he's been pitching so well and he's trying to find it, as we all know in life sometimes he just needs to be left alone to figure it out, let him come to you, whatever. Bauer could have done different ways, be like, hey, Carl Willis, or hey, Francona, hey, maybe I can help him here. I didn't get I don't know if that happened here or not, Jared, but I didn't get that. I just think there's different ways. He's got to learn how to approach people differently. And that's my big overall thing here. It's like, Trevor, it's cool. I appreciate your honesty. I've known people like Trevor Bauer. I always appreciate these kind of characters in my life.
Right.
And I like to have them around me.
Right.
The other thing I always say to people like that, though, is like, remember, not everything you say, even if you think it's factually correct, doesn't mean it's right. Mickey Callaway saying that kind of stuff, he had a purpose behind it. He doesn't need to have facts and data. He's just telling you stuff to give you advice. And you guys can battle it out if you want to, but to say he's completely wrong, you don't have any data to break it up. Well, that I would actually argue, but that's not how life is played out. Sometimes you do need to make adjustments that data doesn't break up because he's seen it. He's been around it. That's the kind of stuff where Trevor, Jared, I'm going to tell you, he's going to need to learn to embrace that a little bit better.
He's not going to, though, Andy.
No, I don't agree. If in a
you
big
think
spot,
he will?
Yes, in a big spot in the playoffs, Jared. I'll tell you this much. Here's where I think Bauer won't admit it, but I think he would proclaim it later in life. I thought Francona handled his whole drone situation in 16 about as best as you can.
Now that I will absolutely agree with.
And he saved him. He saved him. If Bauer was in Boston or if Bauer was in New York, he would have gotten torched for that moment. But Francona did a nice job of deflecting it, putting the fire out, and really rolling from there. And those are the kind of things. Those are the kind of things, Jared. He's going to be in a spot in the playoffs. And here's the other thing too about Bauer. And he did not pitch his normal position. Bauer didn't pitch well in the playoffs either. I know he came out of the bullpen, but Bauer needs to remember he needs help at times just as much as he thinks he's always right.
He was bitter about coming out of the bullpen, too.
Well, he was. And by the way, that's a whole different discussion.
Right.
But you know what? You are a professional. You're getting paid. You need to make pitches. Do we think that's the best thing? No, but he's got to make pitches in those spots anyways, Jared, no matter what.
Andy, there's a thing here though. There's two things that I want to touch on. One, there's youth.
Sure.
That we're talking about youth here. There's youthfulness there. There's learning that needs to happen. We got
yes.
that. We got that
yes.
part.
Yeah.
The other portion is this. This is where I've changed my opinion a little bit because I am an empathetic person. I don't I don't like anything that involves treating anyone like shit. I don't like that.
Right.
I just don't like it.
Of course.
I've experienced it. And I know what it feels like. So when I see it happen to someone else, I actually become irate sometimes. I'm actually better at handling it when it's directed on me than I am at seeing it on other people, I think, at this point in my life. So Trev didn't, we could say it this way, I think. He's kind of been on his own path forever. And yes. You don't know about the chicken or the egg. What came first? Was it his way of doing things that made people act a certain way to him, or did they start acting that way, and that's why he started doing things his own way? The bottom line is the kid was picked on since grade school, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not an excuse, but at least you can see the development of him when he gets to a point that he says he gets to a point in high school where he can't figure out what is it, but is there something wrong with me? People don't like me. I don't know what do I need?
Right.
And he finally says, F it. I like me. I'm good enough. I love the game of baseball, and I'm going to show everyone wrong. Part of it's a chip on his shoulder. Part of it's defense mechanisms.
Yes.
Part of it's wanting to get people back for the way that he's been treated. Like, these are all things that you can say are possibly. And Trevor, if you ever listen to this, maybe that is. I mean, maybe that's a part of it, right?
No,
he got it. Let's just briefly with Garrett Cole, right? With Garrett Cole was a teammate with him in college that
UCLA.
Was a typical in the way that he's framed, at least in this article. It doesn't do him any favors at UCLA, and treated him like garbage. Treated him like garbage because he was different. He didn't. Yes. You don't work hard. You do things on your own, your way. Right? Yet, they both were drafted 1 and 3, respectively.
Right.
And now what? Garrett's with the Astros.
Yes, he was. And by the way, pitched really well against the Indians.
Right. So, I mean, and then he wants to kind of do the political comment about how he's always going to be a teammate of mine, and I'm glad he's done. This is why Trevor is the way he is. I think in a lot of respects.
I agree with everything you said. I think this article was a good article for Trevor. Actually, I think it helped me understand better who he was. I actually think it's important the Indians keep him. I don't think it's going to be easy to keep him either, but I think it's important.
He says it's not going to happen.
No, I
in the
know.
article, he says he's gone after 2020. I think, right?
He had it with a caveat, though. He said because the Indians don't usually pay players like myself,
right,
who are expecting big time money. Now, look, that will be determined down the road, and a lot of things can change. The other thing too is going to probably either be a benefit or a hindrance to the Indians. He wants a year-to-year contract. We'll see if that keeps up.
He won't.
I really, now that reading all this, I think if they do trade Bauer, I agree with Bauer. They better get a huge haul for him because I think Bauer's going to get better. I don't think he's going to decline in the next 5 years. And I'll tell you, you need Trevor Bauer on your team. I think I like his work ethic. I like the way he thinks. I like the way he goes about his business. The only thing, again, I'll mention, he needs to embrace sometimes how it's okay to get advice that's not data-driven, that's not analytical-driven. And there's going to be a moment in the playoffs where that's going to happen. And are you going to be Trevor Bauer in Game 1 in the ALDS and you're striking out the Yankees and everybody loves you? Or is it going to be Game 4 and what we saw the bullpen last year where he really struggled? In Game 4 in the Bronx, he did not pitch well. Yeah. Coming out of the playoffs, and yes, he came out of the bullpen, and we agree that was not the right move. Whatever, you can't get by it. He did pitch in those spots. He didn't pitch well. So Bauer needs to remember, too, it's not all analytical. Sometimes you do need some advice that people are just trying to help you. I think he's going to learn to do that, Jared. I really do. Because in those spots, there's going to be a moment. And Francona, again, the reason why I think it will, Francona, I thought, handled him beautifully in the Blue Jays series in 16. That whole drone thing could have really, really spiraled into a nasty thing.
And let me say this, too. Beyond the what it could have been and, the drone thing and the look and just the optics that we've talked about over and over again since it's happened, Andy. What I like about this is that we're talking about a kid. Once again, let's look at this through the eyes of Trevor Bauer, if we can, for a moment. He's in his hotel room. He's not out partying. He recognizes that he dedicates his entire life to baseball, so he tries to find a different hobby that occupies his mind and gives his mind a break from baseball as a way of recharging.
Yes.
It happens to be something that's picked up across this country with people in using drones, building your own drones.
Yep.
It's a hobby. And something freakishly happens that causes something awful at the worst time possible. I can't bury the kid for that. I just can't do it. I can't.
Nope. No.
I can't. It sucked.
I won't.
It sucked, and we all felt it. It sucked, but no one felt it more than him.
No, there's no question. And right. I think he learned from that. Here's how I'll tie up Bauer in that moment. And here's where I think there's some light and there's some darkness, too. You're right about everything you just said. Here's the other half of that, though. Yoenis Cespedes got hammered hard by the Mets fans for playing golf, and that actually people believe him playing golf the way he plays. People don't know, Cespedes loves playing golf throughout not just the offseason, but throughout the season. And people believe that it really hurt him and hampered him and caused him injury. In fact, that was basically a big topic in New York about him not playing. The things like that are great, but if it interrupts you and it causes you problems like the drone, or in that case with Cespedes for golfing, and it becomes a habit, that's a problem.
Right.
If the drone thing's a one-time thing, hey, it's a funny story in Cleveland lore. That's all it is. Hopefully that's that. That'd be my point to Trevor. It's like, don't let it happen again, though. In Game 1,
it wasn't in Believe Land.
No. By the way, it happened after Believe Land. But here's how I'll wrap it up. And I'll let you have any final thoughts before we talk to Mandy Bell and break down the roster. Yeah. The one thing I think this article did, though, you alluded to it, and I felt that way too. It was a gray offseason, mopiness with the Indians. Again, a lot of change. Brantley's gone. Miller's gone. Allen's gone. A lot of new faces. A lot of new challenges. Questions about the outfield. Can Roberto Perez handle this? What about the relief pitching? I thought this article, though, gave a jolt, at least to me, about getting excited about 19. And I will say also, and Bauer's kind of carried this. He does, and some of the other Indians I'm seeing are starting to, not all of them, and it's not the 90s all the way, but there's a touch of 90s swagger in this team, and I like that. I do like that a lot.
Let me finish up with Bauer and roll, and then I'll finish with that thought as well, is that, again, Andy, I've come to a point where I appreciate the kid.
I do too.
I really was hoping that I would for a very long time. I think that's a part of why I was so angry with him over a lot of the social media stuff, right?
Yep.
But I think that this article really did give me good perspective, even though I don't like everything that I read in it.
Oh,
I've got a nice understanding of things. I think it was an honest and open and generous article that was not a hit job whatsoever. I think it gave you, a look into the mind of someone that was compared to Sheldon on Big Bang Theory at one point. But I don't think he's even looking into this even further. I don't even think that that's necessarily who he is. I just think he's a kid who's put up walls and protected himself in certain ways. And he focuses on baseball because baseball has never hurt him, right? There's an aspect of that
agree.
there.
That's absolutely true.
In regard to the Indians in general, we can say this, and this is something I've noticed, and there is something that has been said by some of the younger kids that have been brought into the squad, and it is this. You're on a team that is expected to win.
Yes.
You've got a coach, you've got a manager that they expect you to win. You're expected to win the Central. You're expected to go on into the postseason.
High expectations.
And there's guys on this team that have come in, and just because some of those other guys are gone, that mentality is not changed. You are on the team that will win the Central this year. You better come and ball out, right?
No, I'm with you.
We know that mentality, that swagger, that belief in yourself, especially the younger and scrappier and that you are, and that you know that the fans look at you as an underdog. The game of baseball is so different. You don't need... When you sign Bryce Harper, or when you sign Manny Machado to 10 years for $300 million, you're not doing it because you know it's going to turn your team around and you're going to win 3 World Series out of those 10 years. That is not how baseball works. It's not.
That's right. That's right.
This team has the ability to do just as well as any other team that is at that upper echelon of teams expected to get into the playoffs.
Because of this, I do agree with you, because of their starting pitching. Their starting pitching is so elite that they can do it.
And what did the Braves do with an elite pitching staff?
I know. I agree. And by the way, they're coming back again. It'll be interesting
and
to hear.
Who did Trevor Bauer idolize as a kid?
I know.
That pitching staff.
It'll be interesting. We're going to have Mandy Bell up here in a minute. And I'm interested to hear her opinions about how camp's vibing. Because from afar, I think you and I are feeling the same thing. An excitement. It's not again, it's cockiness with a swagger. I don't know if they're confident they're going to win it all, but there's definitely a confidence that they know they can compete. And, we'll get into this more with the 25-man roster. There's a lot of guys with a lot of motivation to do well. And again, I think that article, I'm surprised. I thought that article gave it that jolt. And I'm going to say this. I think in a way, Trevor Bauer's become a leader on this team. I'm seeing it already. I think he's not the leader. I think that's Lindor, but I'll say Bauer's 1B.
With the pitching staff, absolutely. With the younger guys that actually want to come to him, absolutely. Yes.
Yes, I think Bauer's 1B now, and that's interesting. I would not have said that a year ago, but I'm definitely seeing it now. It's interesting. It's good, and it makes you feel good going into the year. And to hammer that point, then we should get to Mandy. This is a big year for the Indians. Expectations haven't changed, and you hit it right in the head. This team better win at a high level because we're definitely expecting it here. Second place in a wild card, that's not going to sit well in this town.
Hot and late August, brother, in more ways than one. That's all I want.
Yeah, exactly. No, agreed. With that in mind, we'll take a breath. We're going to have Mandy Bell on next, and then we're going to break down 25-man roster. But first, Mandy Bell.
Joining us, Mandy Bell, Indians beat reporter for MLB.com. Mandy, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First of all, congratulations on enjoying this beautiful weather out in Arizona right now. I know that Andy and I I'm getting snow and Andy's getting cold. But we're jealous of that. I don't want to waste time on the weather. I just wanted to acknowledge it because the jealousy is there. But speaking of, I know the weather is nice and warm. Is that helping to warm the mood of the Cleveland Indians following their terrible loss of the Astros in the playoffs last year?
Well, it actually started very, very cold here. It was about 42 degrees on some days and rain, there was 3 days of rain in the first week, which is absolutely unheard of here. So the weather did not help the mood at first. A lot of people were very frustrated with that. But now that it is over 70, everything's all smiles and great. So everything's great now.
Well, that's good to know because, from a fan's perspective, you're hearing a lot of grumbling right now in Northeast Ohio regarding the Indians and fans everywhere. Because of some of the moves that went on in the offseason and letting people go and especially worrying about what's going to happen at the catcher position. And then, what we're looking at now is the Indians make a move that because of the mood of fans, they're even griping at something that could end up being a potentially typical good Indians move. And that's the grabbing Hanley Ramirez and signing him, where it's no loss if it doesn't pan out. But this is a guy who could potentially be in that lineup and add a bat if he can figure things out.
Oh, definitely. He's someone. It's just a lot of unknown. I think that's the common theme for the entire team right now. When fans are looking in, they're just not sure what to get because there's so many new faces, and when there's unknown, there's so much fear, and then that leads to all this criticism and everything that goes with it. So it'll take once games actually start in the regular season to see how this team's going to go for fans to be able to get a feel for it all. But Hanley Ramirez is somebody, like you said, is absolutely as little of risk as you can get right now, which the Indians have been able to piece together over February, being able to get Alex Wilson, A.G. Cole, like all these different types of options, Matt Joyce on minor league deals that are as little of risk as you can get. So they've been able to piece it together in the last few weeks that I think from a fan's perspective that it should be a little less worrisome than maybe what they were whenever the new year started. But Hanley Ramirez is someone that they're looking at just DH. He obviously has played first base the last few years as well, but they have Carlos Santana, they have Jake Bowers. First base is definitely taken care of. So he's somebody that could just bring that power bat in the middle of the lineup, which they desperately need.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hanley's great, and obviously there's a little bit of relationship there with Francona. Let me ask you, I think part of the reason, too, why a little bit of damperness was the Lindor calf strain right before camp, and also, too, last year we lost Zimmer, who's going to looks like he's out to the summer. What's the latest on those two, Mandy? What are you hearing?
Well, it might have been a little bit of a damper to fans about Lindor, but you could not tell just by talking to him that there's anything wrong with him. He is the most positive person that I have ever been around in my life, and it's really cool because this is like his first major injury of his big league career, and obviously it happened in spring training, so it's easier to deal with. But he's been fantastic so far dealing with it, and they're looking. It looks like he should be back before opening day. Now they're not putting any timetable on it at all. But the vibe that you're getting from Terry Francona, that you're getting from the front office, these guys are starting to feel like he's going to be back in time just because of who he is and how hard he's working. So my guess right now is that he will be back in time to open up the season with the Indians. But if there's any question at all, they will not risk it. The first few games are not that important, right, although fans are very excited for baseball to be back. In the grand scheme of things, that is not that important. So he'll be right around opening day. So if he's not ready to go day one, I don't see it being very much later than that. Bradley Zimmer, on the other hand, it's still up in the air. He's taking batting practice as if there's absolutely nothing wrong. He's full go. He's been on the cage. I mean, he looks fantastic whenever you're talking at the plate. Throwing is going to be a little bit of a slower progression for him. He's up to 135 feet over this weekend is what they said. But he just wants to make sure that he's easing himself into throwing a little bit more. That's whenever he's starting to feel it a little bit more than that. So he obviously will not be ready to go day one, but it might not be like July like they thought over the winter. So he's aiming for at least earlier in the season than that.
Well, that's good. I think Zimmer is going to play a role an important one in this team. And let's keep on the outfield. I saw you wrote an article about Santana possibly playing the outfield. I noticed you had something on Daniel Johnson, which I don't know much about. You hear about all these new guys. Matt Joyce is another signing. I know it's so early, Mandy, but that's the one, I think the one position outside of relief pitching you hear a lot about in the offseason, maybe catcher too. I mean, Jared and I are more focused on catcher maybe than others, but sticking on the outfield, what are you seeing right now for the Indians? I mean, I know, are they really going to rotate 6 guys in and out? Is Naquin going to be playing 120 games or 100 games in your opinion? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Like you said, it's obviously very early to know at this point, but the one definite is Leonis Martinez in center field. They've already told him that, and that's from day one of spring training. My guess is Tyler Naquin will win that right field job, and that will be his. And
I'm glad to hear
the battle
that.
will come down. That's my guess, at least at this point. He looks really, really good so far. The ball is just exploding off of his bat. And when he came back this year, he had hip surgery last year. So the first time he stepped in for live at bats during practice, he was like, "Whoa, this is an adjustment." And but then by the first game, he hit a home run in his first at bat. So I don't think it took him too long to settle in. And so he looks really, really good right now. I think it'll come down to left field between Jordan Luplow and Greg Allen to see how they end up. I think it'll be down to those two. Obviously, with Hanley Ramirez now in the mix, Carlos Santana could be first base, and then Jake Bauers could be an option in left field as well. But my guess right now is that the big position battle will come down to Greg Allen and Jordan Luplow in left.
Mandy, I got to tell you, that makes me really happy for Naquin. He's somebody over the past couple of years that I really have wanted to see come around and become a daily player with this team and make the impact that I just. You can see that he's got the fire, and you just hope that he could put it all together at some point, and I'm hoping that he can do that this year. But talking about this, piecing things together, new faces with this team, and when you contrast the way that the Indians are building this lineup with the bigger news that came out today regarding Philadelphia Phillies and Bryce Harper and 13-year and $333 million. I personally don't like moves like that, and like the way that the Indians seem to be doing it better than, you're not going to win World Series with signing long terms with Bryce Harper's alone. You need to be able to mix and match and put teams together. And I think that Tito knows how to make these guys get the best out of them. What do you think about these long-term big money contract deals? Does it lock up some of these teams into situations that maybe won't end up working out, and actually the Indians are probably doing it better, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, you can get into situations where it can end up locking you up as a team. And like you said, so yeah, I think 13 years, that is a long time. I mean, if you just start thinking about 13 years in the future and how old you'll be at that point and what stage of life you'll be, like, that's just mind boggling to think about. Oh, well, in 13 years from now, Bryce Harper is still in that same contract. Like, that just is insane.
And still making all that money.
Yeah. Right, seriously. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely. It was funny. I would get tweets all the time saying like, "Are the Indians a mystery team in on Bryce Harper?" And I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Anytime I saw that,
boy, they should be playing Sudoku. Another mystery. They're on the wrong mystery business.
It's just not going to be a thing. So it's two different approaches, and it's interesting to look at how the Indians have to go right now, because Chris Antonetti, their president of baseball operations, has been saying the last few years, because they had record high payrolls, they just couldn't sustain that for the next few years. They had to start somewhere. And so this year was the year that they just had to peel back a little bit. And I think the way that they went about it, it wasn't a rebuild, because they could have obviously traded Corey Kluber or Trevor Bauer if they wanted to, but they didn't. They held on to them. If it's a rebuild, you start looking at guys like Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez. So they're not rebuilding. You're holding on to all your super top talented guys on that team. But then you're also infusing a lot of young talent in there as well. And then on that, it's a lot of cost control, like everything. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. If it's successful, they look brilliant.
Well, and that's exactly how I'm thinking about it too, is that if it's successful, we're not even going to know what successful looks like, I don't think, until we get closer to that midway point. Would you agree with that too?
Correct.
Because they're going to be plugging and playing some of these guys to see where they end up clicking.
Right, and they've even said, like, in the past few years, they're active at the trade deadline every single year. And if they think that they're a contender in July, and then it looks like they're in that same spot again, which as of right now, they're favored to be at the top of the AL Central again. If that's the case, they said expect a move again. So I don't think everything's completely set in stone at this point, and everyone seems to be overreacting and freaking out about everything Indians related at all. I think everything's fine. Everything can be calm, and they'll be able to piece everything together as the season continues to go on.
I would also say, too, people freak out at change, and I agree with you. There wasn't a rebuild. It was just a massive year of change, and I actually think the Indians needed it after what happened to the Astros. It was time. I think it was just time to get some fresh faces in there. Now, to one of the changes I was not thrilled about was Yan Gomes leaving. And I do like Roberto Perez, and he's hitting big spots in the playoffs. But, Mandy, I'll be honest with you. I'm very curious to hear what people are thinking about Roberto playing as the lead catcher this year. I don't think it's a minor jump. I think it's a bigger jump there. What are you hearing from others, and what are you seeing from Roberto? Do you think he's ready to handle this challenge of being the lead dog as the catcher this year?
Well, he knew that he needed to obviously work on his offensive numbers a little bit and getting more at bats. So he took it upon himself to go play in the Dominican over the winter. He went to Terry Francona, and he went to the front office, and he said, I want to go. He said, I need this. And they were just like, I mean, if you want to do it, just basically be careful. Don't get yourself hurt. But if you want to do it, go do it. And he hit well. He hit, like, I think it was like right around 300, been a little bit above. He got a good number of at-bats down there, and he just said, hitting on a consistent basis, knowing that if you go 0 for 3 one day and your name's still going to be in the lineup the next day, changed everything for him and allowed him to be way more comfortable. And he said he thinks that consistency this year, assuming that he wins the starting job over Kevin Pilecki, which it looks like in the situation as of right now, it looks like that's the way it's going to go. He seems to think that consistency will help him at the plate. Now, Francona has said multiple times, yes, great. If there's offensive production, that's an added bonus. But what we want from our catchers is a guy who can handle his pitching staff, especially a pitching staff like the Indians have, and he knows how to control his defense. And they can only say the most positive things about the way that he handles the pitching staff and his defensive skills behind the plate. So they seem to be pretty confident in him, and it doesn't seem like there's really much of a debate between Pilecki and Perez as of right now. That's the vibe I've gotten. But yeah, I think but Perez has been saying all spring so far, like, yes, I know that defense is more important and all that stuff, but I still know that I have to hit the ball. And so he thinks that consistency will be that answer for him.
Andy and I are going to sleep a little bit better tonight hearing that from you. Thank you.
See, a
little easier. I mean, I'm going to say, like, everything else I'm okay with now, but I like Roberto hitting big spots in the playoffs in 16. But
and I'm guessing, taking that pressure off, Andy, like Mandy said, you think about getting in there and thinking, I have to produce here because I don't know when I'm going to get another chance. That's got to be the difference.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, we're talking about Perez and the pitchers. I mean, that's the strength of the Indians, the starting five. And, we should bring up our new favorite Indian, Trevor Bauer, who's in the news a lot. I will say, Mandy, I actually took some of this as more of a positive. So I think it gives the Indians more of a national presence. I definitely think the Indians, it gave him a different vibe. He's posting out. He's turning out. That guy's busy. He's pitching. He's doing spring training. He's putting out content every day. And being a content guy myself, I'm impressed by that. Seeing how much he puts out there. Let me ask you, I'm starting to get the vibe. I think Lindor's still the face of the organization. But I think Bauer's becoming a bigger and bigger face, and I would even dare say maybe a leader especially with a Clevenger and a couple others. Do you get that same vibe in the camp?
He's definitely extremely focused on personal brand. I mean, I've talked to him a couple of times, and every time I've listened to him talk about how important it is to promote your own personal brand and how important that is within baseball just in general, because there might not be as many baseball players who are as promoted as like NBA guys or NFL guys. And so that's a big focus for him. So whenever you have this Sports Illustrated article come out and everyone starts talking about that, he said to me, like, I mean, whether it's bad or good, people are talking about me.
That's
and that
right.
gets more of a draw to me. And when there's more of a draw to me, there's more of a draw to the team. And so he's like, I don't see how it's bad. Like, no matter what, there's more eyes coming toward me and the team. So I don't see how that can be a negative thing. So that's basically like what you said is how his mind works. And his goal is to try to get as much attention to him and to whatever team he's on for, it seems like, the rest of his career. And it's just, that's the big step for him, is this production company that he started. And you said you saw it on Twitter. It's momentum, and he's having as much video content pushed out as he possibly can every single day now. It's impressive.
It is. I mean, he's big. I mean, dare I say, he's on the LeBron James path. I mean, with pushing out content, I'm serious. Like, I mean, for a guy like that, I mean, maybe instead of the barbershop, there'll be a drone shop episode, and we'll have people flying drones in the outfield.
I will say that I got at least my opinion of Trevor changed after reading that article, to the sense that I no longer dislike him being on the Indians as much as at all actually anymore. I was ready for him to leave, Mandy. I was ready for him to be gone, just because of the way he has handled himself on social media. But I got a little bit more insight via that article into the how Trevor works and why he is the person he is. And that kind of changed my opinion. I've got a little more empathy for him, knowing how he's been treated over the years. And that might be a part of what has built up his walls to be the guy who focuses on his craft and does his own thing. And that seems to be what he's going to commit himself to for the rest of his career.
Yeah, and he's one of the most fascinating people to talk to, because his brain it never shuts off. I swear, he thinks 24/7 and is able to come up with, I mean, anything baseball wise, pitching wise. Obviously, he's a stats guy. He's a and trackman and all that type of stuff. He's all into the statistics and everything, but he's always wanting answers to why and how, and it just seems like I don't understand how he ever rests, because it just seems like he's always thinking.
I agree.
So to be able to listen to him talk all the time, it's fascinating, because he just brings up all these different points that most of us just don't think about during a day. So yeah, I've been able to hear his side of a lot of this stuff. Obviously, before I was here, I would just hear the stories. I would just see things on social media, but to hear his side of things and explaining every single thing that pops into his brain, it's fascinating to listen to.
The other position, I would say, positions outside the outfield, which I agree with you. I think Naquin, you mentioned it earlier. I think it sounds like Martine's going to be the center fielder, and then you figure out left field, whoever that is. The other one's relief pitching. I know we got Brad Hanser, closer, Simber and Oliver Perez probably got roles in 7th and 8th. And then there's a whole lot of guys. I mean, you mentioned Alex Wilson, which I actually thought was a nice pickup. Neil Ramirez had a good year. He kind of phased out towards the end, but that was really his first year up in the bigs. Tyler Olson's been back and forth, seems like Columbus for the last 3 years. What are you seeing so far from the relief pitchers? I mean, there's a lot on there. Not everybody's going to make the team. I know it's still early, but are you getting a vibe yet on who's going to make it outside those big three I mentioned at the top?
It's tough, because they haven't seen all of their options yet, while like someone like Tyler Clippard, who's still getting settled in at camp because they brought him a little bit late. I'd be interested to see how he does and how he fares, because he's someone like Alex Wilson, where they're both non-roster invites right now, and it's just like they have a good shot. They bring a veteran presence. Yep. They have experience. Both of them have pretty good numbers, and it's something that they will consider. And Francona has said multiple times, the non-roster invitations, all of that stuff, that is just a label. Minor league deals is just a label. It means absolutely nothing. And the Indians have quite the history of adding guys onto the roster for opening day. So they said even expect that to happen again this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if either of them would want to take one of the bullpen spots. Dan Otero is someone who I would say has a very good chance. Neil Ramirez, like you said. But again, we're only about 5 or 6 days into game starting. They haven't been able to work all of their guys in yet. So maybe midway through March, we'd have a better idea. It's just they have so many arms, which a lot of people don't realize how many options they have, because they focus on losing Andrew Miller and Allen. but they have a lot of options to go through. So it'll take some time for them to pare those options down.
Yeah, we ran through them, and there are a ton of names, and I agree with you. Now, to my last question I got for you, as I can talk to you forever about this, it's interesting. It's always hard to get the vibe on the Indians when they're in Arizona and seeing how they're doing. So we appreciate all of this. Mandy Bell with us from MLB.com. The bigger thing I'm hearing, and I don't know how much Jared's hearing, but I'm definitely hearing it, is I think most people think the Indians are going to win the Central, us two included. But the early sexy sleeper pick is the Twins. You're hearing that. I heard that from Joe Girardi saying, I'm not saying they're going to take over the Indians in the Central, but I think they're going to be giving them a big run. Are you getting that same vibe in Arizona? Because I'm definitely hearing it here on the East Coast.
In general, I've started to hear that more within the Indians clubhouse. It seems like they're completely staying as level-headed as possible and focusing on their own goal. Outside of just the Indians clubhouse, I'm starting to hear the Twins a little bit more, and people starting to ask Francona during these media sessions that come in and say, do you still feel like you guys are in the position to win the Central again? There's so much turnover and different things. And like I said earlier, I think the majority of the speculation is just the question mark that surrounds the Indians. Nobody really knows how this team is going to mesh together because they've seen all these individuals on different teams the last few years, and now having them all come together, no one's really sure how that's going to work. Mm-hmm. Because the Indians have basically been the same for the past few seasons.
Yeah,
so
it's
weird to see such a different lineup. So I think that's the biggest concern, is just what are they going to get? And because there is this question mark, does that leave enough wiggle room for the Twins, who had a good offseason? Like, could they then overtake the Indians this year and win the Central? At this point, I still would say my vote would be the Indians end up winning the Central again this year. That's just my early vote at this point. But again, nobody really knows what anyone's in store for with the Indians this year.
Well, I know that we agree. My pick is the Indians. The Twins are going to struggle with pitching, and the Indians are not. Mm-hmm. And so unless they're putting up an 8 spot every night, the Twins really don't have a chance to take the Central, in my opinion. So I'm going to stay that optimistic with the team. Mandy, really appreciate your time. Mandy Bell, read all her work at Indians.com. Indians beat writer Mandy Bell, thank you for joining us, and I hope to talk again soon and find out more as the progression of this spring ball goes on, and get some more insight from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to Mandy Bell. And now it's time to break down the 25-man roster. Jared, I think we should start off with the starting rotation, because that is really the strength of this team. You and I have talked offline about this. If you want to go into the playoffs and argue Price and Sale, or you want to go into the Astros with, Verlander and Keuchel. Actually, Keuchel's not going to be back this year, but Garrett Cole. You can make arguments about the starting 3 and how they match up, and it's hard to disagree or agree. But the starting 5, I don't know if there's anybody even in the field. The Indians, by far, Kluber, Bauer, Carrasco, Clevenger, Bieber. Bieber on most teams would be a 3 or a 2. Maybe on some bad teams, Jared, I'd even say a 2 or a 1. And Bieber's our 5th. And Plutko's going to be your 6th. So I think they have a great starting rotation of 5. Plutko's going to be the Josh Tomlin. I think you're going to see him this year. There's always injuries that come about. But, Jared, that starting 5 rotation, you can't – we've talked a lot about Bauer. The one thing that should be brought up about Kluber that should never be forgotten is, I know everybody wants to focus on 17-18. I always remind people, in 16, that kid was wonderful in the playoffs. Kluber was on fire in 16 up until Game 7. He led us, along with Andrew Miller, to the World Series. Anyways, I had to get that off again. Kluber, since 2014, is number 1 in WAR and is second in innings pitched behind Scherzer. Kluber is a great pitcher. I know it's easy to reflect on those playoff things that happened in 17-18, but people need to be remembering Kluber is a great pitcher.
3rd in Cy Young voting last year.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Correct.
Which we can joke real quick. Bauer wasn't happy about because he was 6th and he thought he had a better year. Anyway, that's another thing.
Yeah. We did Trevor.
I know. We forgot to mention that. It was on my head and it made me laugh. Andy, teams will not get a break.
No.
Teams will not get a break. You're talking about going in on a 3-game series Teams are not going to get a break.
No.
4-game series, still no break. No break. There is no break.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, with this is where, if for people, and I'm one of them, who are wondering the outfield, can Roberto Perez, Yan Gomes' bat was very important last year. So can Roberto Perez hit even half of what really Yan Gomes did? Just remember, Perez really batted in the 100s the whole year. So can he get in the 200s and do well? The starting rotation should ease a lot of agita. It should really help. Now, I don't know how much more you can add about the starting rotation. Again, it's so solid. I think Clevenger's going to get better. I think Bauer's going to get better. I think Bieber's going to get better. And Carrasco and Kluber are kind of mainstays
I think,
now.
is my only worry, only because I know he's kind of had the mental hurdles in the past that I worry about a little bit with him. But other than that, I think Shane Bieber's too young to worry about anything.
No.
I don't know.
No.
I feel like, and Clevenger, I've always thought highly of Clevenger, and I think he's all in on because of Bauer.
Yeah.
For better or for worse in a lot of ways, but for better in regard to how he's going to look this season on the mound.
I agree. The relievers is where everybody kind of nationally and locally kind of pause, and for good reason. Let's get out the three that we know. Brad Hand's your closer.
Right.
Simber's going to pitch somewhere in the 7th and 8th along with Oliver Perez.
And I feel like a lot of people forget Simber is on the squad every once in a while.
Yeah, Simber's pretty good. He's not going to pitch like Brian Shaw did, because Shaw pitched length. Again, Shaw wasn't a lights-out pitcher. What Shaw gave you was length. He pitched a lot of innings out of the bullpen, and that can never be... I underestimated how much that was worth. When he left last year, I felt the Brian Shaw effect, where it's like, man, you missed Brian Shaw. He pitched a lot of innings throughout the year. But you got Simber, you got Perez, and Perez hopefully will be able to pick that up, too.
And if you've got the starting lineup that's getting you to mid-6 to 7, then you're good.
Then you're good. So to the other options on the team, you can go through all these different names. I don't think you're going to know, Jared, who's going to be in the end of the road of relief until the end of March. But, you're going to have Neil Ramirez, you're going to have Goody, Dan Otero, which I'll get to in a second, Tyler Olson, who's a lefty, Clippard, John Edwards. I'm hearing a lot about John Edwards. I think it's a feel-good story. We'll see if he makes it. Jerry Rodriguez, who came over in the Nationals trade, Alex Wilson, and Nick Whittigan, and he's a Boilermaker, so obviously he's a great pitcher. He came over from the Marlins this year. Look, at the end of the day, you're going to have those 5 we mentioned above. So with the 3 pitchers we made, that's 8. I think the Indians are going to carry 4 more pitchers on this team. I think they're going to have to carry an extra utility or someone extra on the bench to hit. So you're looking at 4 of those pitchers we just mentioned, Jared. So I'm assuming Plutko will be in Columbus to start the year. So, you can mix and match. I did like Neil Ramirez. I thought he got tired at the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if Ramirez makes it. I don't know much about Rodriguez. We're going to have to see him pitch. He pitched in Washington last year. I do like Alex Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Wilson makes the team. And you can, Tyler Olson, for whatever reason, he's never taken that next step. So we'll be interested to see if he can take that step. Francona has always, I wouldn't say he's been down on Olson, but he doesn't talk positively about Olson. So I'll be interested to see if Olson can turn the leaf. And then I do want to stay in on Dan Ontario.
What I wanted to say briefly before that is that these guys, it's not going to be hammered out in the first couple of months of the season. It's just not. It's not going to be, which is fine. It's fine. I want to see these arms.
Yeah, you're going to see some bus trips from 71 from Columbus to Cleveland. You're definitely going to see a lot of that. The only guy I'm not trying to pick on him. I think I think Dan Otero is a really nice man. I've heard him speak, and he seems like a good dude. Jared, I'm good with Dan Otero, even if he has a good spring. I don't want to see Dan Otero pitching anymore out of the bullpen.
He's one of the few that had me angry last year, so I've got nothing else to add.
Yeah, again, nice guy. I just have seen enough of Dan Otero. I just have seen enough of Dan Otero. Again, I don't want to pick on a guy. That's the only guy on this list, Jared. Yeah. Along with, I don't know much about, again, John Edwards, and I obviously he's a Boilermaker, but I don't know anything about Whitgren, if I'm being honest. But Dan Otero, I've seen enough for the last 2 or 3 years, Jared. I'm good. I don't think I just wouldn't bring him back.
And then we talk about, of course, Danny Salazar.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up last. And, the early indications are, Jared, that he is still not even really pitching full strength yet. And by the way, he didn't pitch at all. I don't know. Danny, I'll be honest with you, reading what I've been reading, and I'll get what you think. Jared, I'm getting the vibe we're never going to see Danny Salazar pitch again in Cleveland.
Oh, boy.
What do you think? I don't think he's going to pitch.
It's a believe it when you see it kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the right outlook. I'm even below that. I don't think Danny's going to pitch this year in Cleveland. I just don't. There's been a lot of good positive vibes, and this usually these first 2 weeks is when you get the most positive remarks. Jared, I didn't see anything about Salazar at all. Nothing.
And I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying
is nice, but I don't know. There's no reason to fight. There's no reason to rush a guy back early.
When it
comes to the Indians
year.
In this situation, there's no.
I just don't know. That's why I'm so bothered by.
Maybe he doesn't.
That's why I'm so bothered by Salazar. It's like, you didn't even pitch. How are you still? They don't even know. I know. That is the guy. If they ever were to brought up, I'd be like, well, I don't trust him at all in a big spot. I'm sorry. It'll be interesting. And they did sign him to a big contract. He had a big pay raise this year, so it'll be interesting. But Jared, again, we'll check back in the end of the spring training with Mandy and get a better, hopefully, read on Salazar. But I'll be honest with you, bud, I don't see it right now, Salazar. I have scoured for any kind of positive remarks from Willis or Francona. Nothing. How do you think he's going to be remembered in Cleveland at this point? I don't think it's going to be.
I don't know that he's going to be remembered all that much. I don't know. Mandy did talk about him on the 12th a couple weeks ago. But I
just think Salazar, again, and that's when they started pitchers and catchers reported. So that was the first day that they were reporting into camp on February 12th. The thing I leave on Salazar is that's a pleasant surprise. That's how I'm leaving. It's a pleasant surprise because I'm not expecting it. I don't think he's going to be pitching. Jared, it would shock me if he pitched in a big game.
If he pitches at the end of spring training, then I'll say the jury's still out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm more negative on it. I think what you're saying though, Jared, is very fair. I'm just not. I was thinking that's where I was last year. I was just surprised. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what Salazar does next year. Looking at the relief pitchers, I think there's, as you mentioned, Jared, and you hit the right note, you're going to see some bus shipping back and forth. I don't think the relief pitching staff is set, but I see some definite options. And from what I'm reading too, I think the Indians have some other guys who might be coming in there who are young, who we don't know their names yet. So I think the Indians relief staff's going to be okay at the end of the day. I really do. And so, with everything we're going to get to next on the field when it comes to the sticks and to the gloves, I do think the Indians pitching, again, as it was the last 2 or 3 years, again, is in very good shape. Starting pitching, and even the relief is not as bad as what I think people are alluding to.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is 8-Bit Ray from the Gorilla Brain Podcast, part of the Pulse Podcast Network. Did you know that you could be using this spot to advertise your company or business? Well, I've done the research, and PodcastInsights.com report that podcast listeners are loyal, affluent, and mostly college educated. But most importantly, are 5 times more likely to interact with the ad they hear on their favorite podcast than an ad from any other medium. If you would like to advertise your company or brand with our network, it's simple. All you have to do is send an email to marketing@pulsepodcastnetwork.com. I'll say it one more time. marketing@pulsepodcastnetwork.com. And we hope to hear from you soon.
To the position players, I think when you start with the Indians and you have Lindor out with an injury, I thought that set a weird tone. I think it's going to, the only thing, Jared, I would say, when you have someone like that who's out, knowing you have troubles already in your lineup because of people leaving, I do think it's important if Frankie starts the year off in the lineup. If he doesn't, it's okay because he needs to get healthy for the whole season. But I think he can't sit out like a month of April. I think he needs to be in there by mid-April. I think this team's going to need him. The other guy too, who we have not talked about enough yet, but we should, is Jose Ramirez. J-Ram was on a MVP streak. He went 30 for 30 again last year. Combined, Ramirez and Lindor are setting records that were only matched by Gehrig and the Yankees. I mean, you're talking historical stuff. Jared, I think the other story that kind of gets lost because everything that's been going on in Bauer is, Jose did not hit at all. He only batted 166 basically at the end of the year. He's 24 for 145 and 0 for 11 in the ALDS. J-Ram, I'm not saying it's crucial, but I think it would be nice for him to get off to a good start.
I'm not worried. I don't think...
That's interesting. I'm a little concerned.
I don't think it carries over from last year. I think that I genuinely think just because of just Jose's personality, I don't think he's holding on to that. I don't. I think he's going to be fine.
I love Jose Ramirez. He is my favorite Indian out of everybody on the team. I love that guy. I hope he ends as an Indians. I like cheering for him. I love his story. I love his passion and everything else.
Yes.
I don't think it's make or break, but I think it's important that he has a hot start because of what's going on in Lindor. I think the other big position that we've kind of alluded to, so now it's time to hit the hammer on it. Yan Gomes is gone. Roberto Perez is in. There's two shades of this. I think the defensive side of Perez is important. Perez did not have the greatest. He had an okay glove. Pilecki was brought in. So I think you're going to see a little bit of Pilecki as we did with Perez. Jared,
I don't like any of this, Andy.
I know. I don't either. And by the way, I don't have a touch of gray here. I think Roberto Perez is a huge story if he gets off to a slow start with the bat. He better produce because Yan Gomes did a lot of hitting in this lineup. And this 100, 150 stuff's it's not gonna be good.
No, it's very frustrating. No, I can't. Give me. I mean, are we gonna give me 230?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what
give me
230
and a solid throw-out ratio. Numbers, and I think that I can deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I've got way more hope for J-Ram coming back strong than I do for Roberto Perez having a better season at the plate. I just don't. I don't see it happening. I don't.
I don't think you're wrong there. I'll transition
and
quickly.
It's frustrating.
It is. I think
because it seems like they didn't have a plan. I just don't understand the move.
I agree.
It didn't it was a move that I don't think they needed to make. I don't. Am I missing something here? What were there?
Well, the Johnson's supposed to be a talented young outfielder. They brought in Rodriguez to help with the bullpen. They better do those things because Yan Gomes, folks, he hit in the playoffs. He hit all year long. He was an all-star. Yan Gomes is coming to a very top-notch catcher in this sport. He's very good. I'll twist it from there and pivot to another guy. I think it's a big year for him, not because he's a mainstay, but probably because he's gone. Kipnis is in a big year. This is basically his final year of his contract because there's a club option in 2020, and there's no way they're picking him back up. So this is a big year for Kipnis. Kipnis has really struggled for the last year and a half. He had a good string of a month or two here and there in 17 and 18. He had a hot August last year. The year before that, he had some at-bats here and there, Jared. Kipnis is going to have to produce, I think, big in some big spots. And by the way, I think he'll be motivated to because of his free agency. Kipnis has really been forgotten on this squad, which I am amazed by because he played so well in 16, and it's amazing. It's so funny how sports change. Kipnis is one I would never have guessed. We kind of landed here with him, where we don't know where to put him, and now because of the thinness of the lineup, you have to put him back at second, and that's the other thing too. I don't want to pick on Kipnis, as I do like Kip.
Right.
Kip's gloves got to be better than it was last year. He let way too many ground balls get in the outfield, and he's got to do a better job getting that.
Even Frankie made
throws.
a few last year. That whole team defensively fell off from what they were, especially
except for Jose. Yeah, Jose was really solid throughout the year, but everybody else. So, it'll be interesting to see how Kipnis does. And then we kind of alluded to with Mandy. Then you got the whole Hanley Ramirez thing. Carlos Santana's back too. So you got all these different intertwined parts. Here's the possible lineup. It looks like with Hanley in there.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that's the thing. This whole thing with Hanley Ramirez, and I've talked to you offline about this, about fans, showing their frustration in weird ways, where they're almost angry over the Hanley Ramirez move, even though there's nothing to be angry about.
By the way,
this is one of those situations where you could resurrect a career.
And by the way, Hanley played for Francona. Francona knows him very well.
Exactly.
Don't take it so lightly. Here's the thing with this team, and we kind of got into it, Mandy, so I won't repeat too much. You're going to have Leonis Martin. I think Naquin's going to have a good year if he stays healthy. I know a lot of people like Luplow. I think Bowers moving to the outfield wouldn't be a bad thing. I think Santana going to first, Hanley being your DH, and Bowers going to left, Jared, it's not bad. I feel a lot better than that than what I've seen before. It'd be nice to see Greg Allen take a next step. Here's the one thing that we kind of alluded to throughout, but I will allude to again. I think Zimmer in the late summer is going to be a big deal. I think they're going to need Zimmer to play well in some big spots because I think they're going to need a solidified leadoff hitter in August and September and October. And that's going to, you got to hope it's either going to be Lindor or Zimmer or I don't know who it's going to be. But, you love to have a guy in center field who can make all these catches, run balls down, and have a stick. And if we're being truthful, how much we like Leonis Martin, and I do like Greg Allen, the only guy who fits that bill is Zimmer in center field. And Zimmer is such a key. I think it's not going to be a key early. We know he's not coming back until July, but God, he's going to be so huge.
Well,
when
can
he
I
comes
say
back.
this too? And this is a kid who I've really been a fan of. That I really hope that this is the year that he gets his life together. In a sense, is I love Tyler Naquin. I think that he has the potential. If he can calm himself down, if he can reel it in, he has the potential of being explosive in certain areas, especially defensively. And I have high hopes for him. I don't even know if everyone else is thinking about the kid, but there's something about Tyler Naquin that I really, really, really like. And if it plays out, then great. I was right. But I'm going to be really upset if this isn't a breakout year for that kid.
No, agreed. And I think Naquin can do it. And by the way, Naquin was playing well before he got hurt. And then when he got hurt, I think that affected the Indians more than what they want to allude to. And I'll tell you the other one too, and he's not here anymore. And I did like him when he's healthy, but Lonnie not being healthy in 17 and 18, I thought really affected this team too.
Oh yeah, big time.
And I think
because Lonnie was another big spot guy.
He always hitting well in big spots. But and by the way, I wish him well in Pittsburgh. I hope he plays well for the Pirates because he's a good guy. It'd be nice to see him hit again. But here's your basic lineup. Well, he's not bad.
I'm kidding.
Come
It's just
on,
the city. I don't wish anything good for the city. I wish it good for him.
Pour yourself a cocktail and relax there. So here's your possible lineup. Then we'll get to a few more things. I'll wrap up. Leonis Martin, Lindor, once he comes back. J. Ram, Santana, Kipnis, Hanley, we'll say for now. Bowers, Matt Joyce, Pilecki, Perez, and then Naquin, Luplow. I think those are really your guys here. The obvious big question here is, where is Max Moroff, or is it going to be Chang playing shortstop when Lindor's out? We'll figure that out. I do think you're going to have to – I would be surprised if Lindor starts the year off. So let's see who that is. I think Max Moroff's going to have a spot in this role. So basically, I think your last decision is going to be Luplow, Joyce, and Allen. I think those are your guys here. You're going to have to make a decision on who do you really want to keep and who do you want to get off the get off the team. And that's why you got spring training. I think that's what's I really, again, similar to the relievers. I think spring training is going to determine who your final outfielders are. I would be surprised if Francona's already got it written down somewhere. I think he's really going to let the spring play out.
Might
Don't
as
you
well.
think?
Yeah, I mean, you can, and you can tool the lineup throughout the first half of the season, the first third of the season. I'll give you the first third. But you really got to get this train rolling up towards at least get a nice streak going or something towards the All-Star break and figure out whether you want to add a bat, figure out what it is that you can do, because I think the Indians, like I said, are going to do the same thing that they've done for the past few years. They'll come back to the table at the midpoint, and they'll look at what they think they need, and they'll try to make a move. I don't know how big a move they'll try to make, but they'll definitely try to do something to shore up an area that it looks like they need a little help in. More than likely, it's going to be a bat, in my opinion, and more than likely, there's a good possibility it'll be someone in the outfield. Then again, it could be a DH. We don't know yet.
We'll have to see. And there's always injuries. There's always injuries.
Yes,
and that's the one thing I want to, keep your eye out for Bobby Brantley, who's been hyped up coming into the year. Daniel Johnson's part of the Gomes deal. Oscar Mercado, he was part of the St. Louis trade that came over, and then Chang we've talked about already. Those are names of younger kids I think you're going to see in and out. But I think, Jared, the big thing about this team, that's why I think it's important for J-Ram to get off to a good start. I think that's why it's important for Lindor to get back.
Yeah.
The only thing about this team that we did not have when we signed Edwin in 17-18, it gave us depth and it gave us good ability to really go on day to day and have a great lineup. The Indians don't have that anymore.
No.
The Indians really, really are thin in certain areas. So if Lindor's injury is extended, or J-Ram's slump continues, or Kipnis is hitting 180, those are you can't hide that stuff anymore. Perez hitting in the 100, you can't hide it anymore. It's going to stick out. That's the only thing about this that I think we need to be truthful. You could hide those players, and we did last year well on this team. Jared, you can't this year.
Nope.
They're going to stick out. They're really going to stick out. They're lucky they're in the division they are. We kind of went through everything, so to go back through would be obnoxious. We're going to do an MLB review and a preview at the end of March. We'll bring Mandy back on, talk about that. The big things, though, that we have not mentioned, Francona is the man. I love that guy. I have never wavered on him. I've heard a little bit of that for the first time this year, and not a lot, a little. I love Francona. I think he's the man.
Again, I've heard it from fans. Again, and again, it's misdirected frustration.
Misdirected. Francona is the man. He is our guy. He's such a good fit. And I can't tell you, because we live in the different area of the country, and especially where you live in Baltimore, Antonetti and Chernoff are wonderful. They are some of the best front office people you can have. We are lucky to have these three.
Oh, yeah. I will be at Camden Yards watching that miserable Orioles team this year and play against the Indians. And
they're bad.
How can you be upset with Antonetti or Chernoff? They have made this team a competitor in the Central, taken the Central how many years in a row now? There's no reason that Indians fans should pack it in, before the season even starts.
I agree.
There's a lot of young talent that it might look rough in the beginning, but this team can really come together and make something happen, in my opinion.
I agree.
This season.
I agree. And my final thoughts, I think the Bauer article is a bigger positive than what people think. I know people took out the dating things and whatever, but I think that really explained who he was as a person. I think it's going to make the team better. I really do. I think it actually explained a lot that happened. I know there's a lot of frustration with Clevenger and Bauer, and they obviously expressed it in the SI article about the analytics and how they thought the Astros had an advantage. I think hopefully, Jared, that all now can be moved on to passing and you look forward, which I think they will do. The Indians have a great starting rotation. I think their relief pitchings get overblown by people, even nationally. I think that'll figure itself out. The only thing with the Indians, and we mentioned the players, I won't mention by name again, getting off to slow starts this year is going to affect the team more than it would in past years.
Yes.
If you're one of the mainstays and you're not playing well, it is going to show up as an eyesore, and it's going to be, and it will be seen. So that's my only hint of warning. With that said, I am excited. I did not feel this way even back in January, but after this whole thing, and boy, especially after Lindor, it was really downy. I was a Debbie Downer after Lindor injuries. I was getting concerned, but I will say my energy's picked up a lot, and I'm excited about this year. I really am.
Hey, you know what? At the very least, I'm always excited about Indians Twitter, so that'll get me through anything.
They are the best Indians Twitter. So as we mentioned, we will do an MLB. We'll do a recap of the Indian spring. We'll do we'll look at the division. We'll look at all baseball. I'll pick unders and overs. We'll have Mandy Bell back on at the end, and then later this week we're going to do Browns. Hayden Groves is at the combine, so we'll do little Browns with him, and then we'll do Cavs report card, and we'll do that at the end of the week.
He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. This is Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond, a part of the Pulse Podcast Network. Talk again soon. Take care.